And welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Writers Toolshed. I'm your host, Richie Billing, and today we're talking all about writing groups, how they work, what benefits they bring, and how you can join one. To help me, I'm delighted to welcome three writers from our community, Isa, Josh, and Jonny. All three are members of weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly writing groups that were all arranged in our Discord server. Anyone can join our community, and in doing so, you can find a writing group that matches your genre, your time zone, and your time commitments. As we'll hear in today's episode, writing groups can act as jet fuel if you're looking to improve your writing. And not only does it help you with your own stories, but you're also helping other people with theirs. And in doing so, you're getting better and sharper when it comes to editing, which is, for me, where the real writing is done. So if you want to join us, we'd love to have you. Just click the link in the description to learn more. If you join our Discord server, you'll also gain access to our brand new feature called Panels. Every few weeks, we host a panel discussion on a specific writing-related subject, and we invite members from our community, as well as a very special guest, to help us break it down. Our first panel was all on world building, and this took place on the 7th of May. Our special guest was the brilliant best-selling author Stephen Aryan, who was a guest on this show not long ago. And he spoke about his new book, The Judas Blossom, as well as answering everyone's questions on crafting worlds. If you want to check out the recording, you can watch it on our YouTube channel, the link to which you can find in the description. And to gain access to future panels, you need to join our Discord community. The panel events are live, and as always, we'll be recording them and sharing them later. So if you can't make live events, don't worry. And you can also send in questions ahead of time so that you make sure we cover what you're looking to learn about. If you enjoy listening to the podcast and don't want to miss an episode, be sure to follow or subscribe. A quick rating on the Spotify mobile app or a review on iTunes goes a huge way too. Not only does it tell us that we're doing something right, but it helps us wage war against them algorithms so that other people can find us. And ultimately, the more people who listen, the more episodes we can do. So to that end, please give this episode a quick share on social media or tell anyone you think may be interested about it. Don't forget, if you want to learn more about writing fantasy, you can get access to classes, books, interviews, guides, and a little bit of merchandise, all on our Patreon page. The link for that is in the description too. Now it's time to crack on, and I'm delighted to welcome from our community, Josh, Jonny, and Isa, for a chat about the power of writing groups. I'm delighted to be joined by three brilliant writers from our very own writing community. We've got Isa, Joshua, and Jonny. Welcome, everyone. How's it going?
Very well. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. You're doing well?
Doing great.
Oh, nice. I think it's a good thing best place to start, I suppose, is to explore a bit about your writing journeys and how you've ended up joining our community. Go on, Isa, do you want to go first?
Okay. Okay, so hi, I'm Isa Tony. I mostly write short stories, fantasy and sci-fi, but I will venture sometimes horror or even contemporary fiction. I'm working on a novel. I've been working on a novel for quite some time, but I still need, there are things that I need to learn before it's, ready. I love fantasy. It's my go-to genre since I learned to read. I've always read, have always consumed fiction, but I started writing later in life. It was in 2018 that I actually bought a notebook and a set of pens and started writing the stories in my head and learning about crafting stories as well. And things just kind of escalated from there.
Very good. What about you, Jonny?
So I started writing pretty young, actually. Like, I just loved storytelling. I liked drawing. I liked video games and sort of just wanted kind of my own sandbox to play in. So I'm kind of that weird writer who's been like building my own universe, instead of like abandoning a project and like moving stuff, I just keep rebuilding in my own sandbox. And actually, when the pandemic was happening, that was kind of when I finally had the time to refocus because I had written a few like really bad drafts, but like I started having these like connections and making big changes to the story and like combining things and just really kind of thinking about the whole thing and ended up plotlining like what's going to end up being a multi-book series. So I'm really excited and just like having gotten out a couple manuscript drafts, like I'm about like 2.5 books through, it's just so you need other people to tell you what you like. So for me, I just loved having the writing group and being able to like get some perspective on that because it's so hard to do, like writing fantasy. Mine's second world, science fantasy, very like everything in the kitchen sink because that's what I like. So it's just getting other people's reactions and how stuff is landing. Like it's just really invaluable from any reader, and you get it from writers, and they can frame it so much differently, I think. Than like a reader can.
Definitely, yeah. I think that brings us nicely to Josh because it was your idea to form these writing groups within our wider community. So Josh, tell us all about you.
Yeah, well, I'm actually 19, so I'm still youngin'. I started writing when I was pretty young, but I sort of took a couple-year break just because I lost interest in it. And I only really started seriously getting back into it about a year ago. And I'm currently working on a fantasy novel. I love the fantasy genre in general, and just all books. But the idea for the writing group, I was just talking with a couple other people in Richie Billing's Discord channel, and I had been watching Brandon Sanderson talk about his strategy for his own writing groups and how that had worked out for him in his writing career. And I had this really big passion to create that in a community for multiple people, including myself. And so I got talking with a couple people and we decided to gauge interest, and we got like 60 different people wanting to do different writing groups, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And these are people from all across the world.
It was kind of crazy to watch it happen.
Yeah, it was a lot of times I was flying around.
Yeah, I remember reading the message. It was like, all caps. Yes, please, let's do this. Like, immediately excited about it.
It is because we watch videos like Brandon Sanderson, and he's talking about how he's got this brilliant writing group with all these awesome writers. I don't know how they keep up with them, by the way. And you wonder how you can get access to that yourself. And it's really hard to find people, isn't it? Like it's hard enough finding people who got similar interests in your local area, and online's even quite difficult sometimes. And I was looking in forums and then places like Reddit and then Facebook when Facebook went weird. And
it's like it's hard too because most authors are so busy trying to be authors and like working on their own craft that it's like really hard to dedicate that time to somebody's work. So I think there's sort of like a mutual accountability between everyone where it's like you are getting something, but you also have to make sure like you're showing up in delivering for the other authors too, So there's like sort of a mutual benefit that just works really well, or has for our group. I'm seeing a lot of like nodding. So I think that here that other groups feel the same.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to start. So why did you all seek out a writing group? What do you think, or what did you hope the benefits would be in joining one?
So like me, I live in Portugal. So like I want to write in English, I read in English, and I couldn't find people to just share. So writing had been a very lonely pursuit for a very long time. I was writing by myself, with myself. And I don't know, I felt stuck and I actually felt lonely. And I think when I found your community, Richie, like by chance I was searching for fantasy subgenres and I found you and I found your Discord. I was like, oh my gosh, these people, they like the same things that I do. And I think this community has changed everything. I improved as a writer and also as a person, just to be able to just talk, share, and give feedback, and also get feedback from other people.
Yeah.
That for me was the tipping point for sticking a community and then a writing group.
I think that's so true, because it is such a solitary experience sometimes writing, because, like, it's your story, like you're the one who feels like you have to tell it, and you're so invested in it and these characters, and you want to share it with people, but like just getting, like you said, that sense of community and getting, I was at the place where it's like, okay, I don't want to move any further with this if it's not working, or, I'm looking at a multi-book series. So it's like, yeah, it's good to have that like structure out to the end and know where it's going. But like, if people aren't going to get into it at the start, like that's the hardest thing to do for fantasy, is like get people into your world and not overwhelm them with world building and stuff. And a lot of times the first draft is like you creating that stuff, or like, I don't know how everybody else works, but just getting a group that they can share their experiences. We share our tips, our resources, as we start going out, like we're not just using it for our manuscripts, like we're starting to get, ideas for like how to write our queries, how to write our summaries, how to write our synopsises, which is like a whole nother skill set too. And sometimes other people are way better at like distilling down the essence of the book. And we also use it to like we make predictions about each other's stuff every so often. We're like, so what do you think is going to happen here? So that way we can like tell if it's working or it's too predictable, or, like where people are struggling. And it's all coming from such a supportive place, I think, which has been so nice. And also get used to giving and receiving critiques, which I think is like something that can be really hard when it personal.
Definitely. People can't take it very personally. You got to get past that.
Yeah, and I think our group, like we've all been really good about trying to frame it always around the work and the piece, and it's never about the person or their writing. It's just, and we give tons of suggestions, but we know that like they're not always the answer because we don't know the work, but maybe it gets you, I don't know, just having other authors, I feel like bouncing stuff off of them, they might say something that is not the answer at all, but it sparks that little thing that's like, oh no, that's not it, but now I know how to fix that. Like they're identifying a symptom and you have to come up with the cure. So I've been just loving that. And we've all, I think, really had those experiences in our story. Like none of our stories are the same as where we started, which is just so exciting. And where other people felt like maybe they like I never give up on mine. Clearly I've been doing it for like 20 plus years. So like I don't, but some people, they can just throw a story aside, and sometimes having that accountability of those people telling you like, no, it's good, like keep pushing, like this is working, like there's a really cool story here. Like sometimes you just need those cheerleaders to like get you to keep going and push forward. So
it's like a support network, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you think, Josh? What drew you towards the writing group?
Yeah, for me, honestly, I had my family and friends reading what I was writing, right? And I think a lot of us do. But the things that family and friends can't help with is the writing side of it. Where a specific, when you have other writers helping you with your work and you're helping others with their work, you can give insight that others don't have. Because, I mean, I'm guessing a lot of us have done research into the writing craft, right? And it is a craft. And so I think having that conversation and dialogue with other writers and that insight has just been super helpful. And that was really what drew me starting that.
And you can get like proper feedback, can't you? I always worry if it's your friend or a family member giving you feedback, they're just being nice. They'll say it's good, whatever. You know what I mean? It might be awful, but they'll still say it's good because they don't want to offend you.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but like I keep spotting my own critiques in my own work now.
That's something that I noticed as well. Like sometimes I'm giving feedback, but I'm actually learning so much by giving feedback. Sometimes even more than like receiving, because I've given feedback and then I went back to my own work to apply it because I was doing the same thing. And we all have those blind spots, things that we do and we don't notice. And when you have more sets of eyes on your work, it becomes so much those those
definitely.
flaws, those things that you have to work on.
And ours turn into our running jokes. Like they're like something that we all like joke about in our group. Like when because we've all written those sentences. We're like, really? Like, really? Like the same word within like 3 lines, or like you just said that, So like, or like a color, or we have like a bunch of running jokes in our group, and that just makes it so much easier because like it builds camaraderie like between all of you, and like trust that you've got each other's backs and that you're in like a safe space. And it's so hard to find that as creatives, and like you said, give you that author perspective on like in just a way that a regular reader can't. And to tie back to what Issa was saying about the editing, like the editing brain and the writing brain are just so different, and so having to like apply that editing mindset as you're reading through other people's manuscripts, it really strengthens that tool for you too when you're going back through, and we all trade pro tips for writing, like writer's block. Like, what do you do when you're hitting a wall, or like you're in the middle of writing and something's stumpy? So you just go in your Discord channel and be like, okay, let's solve, I need an idea for this from people who actually know your story somewhat. So it's just, been.
Yeah. I think the editing is a really interesting point because we're always told, obviously, we've got to practice writing as much as we can, but we're never really told to practice editing, and editing is so important. And this is a really good way because you're editing all different kinds of stuff, but it's the kind of things that you write. So it's all relevant to what you're doing as well. And I think you learn an awful lot. You analyze what's the story's missing, and you get in a good mindset then. So when you come to edit your own stories, you've got a more like efficient critical eye, I think.
Yeah, it's so true.
And it is. Having a bunch of people doing the same thing, it also helps. Because prior to the writing group, we had like beta, so I would ask someone to beta read for me, and that's fine. But it's just like one opinion. When you have a group, and then you see where they come together, like
all three of them.
They all mention the same thing. Okay, so we need to do something about it. Or no, they disagree. So it might be a way around it. And also like watching the conversation play.
I think I saw something like that in Stephen King's On Writing. And he's saying if everyone's saying the same thing, you need to change it. But if everyone's saying something different, it could just be like a matter of personal preference.
I've heard that from agents and editors too. Like one's opinion, 3 is a pattern, so it's like, okay. And you should listen to it. Like they're just trying to benefit your work, and I think getting those critiques, that's something that as writers, like I'm researching a ton into like querying and finding agents, because I think that's like the most important step for a writer, like getting somebody that's an advocate, and if that's the route you want to go versus, self-published. But like they want to see people who know how to take edits and critiques that aren't going to take it too personally, because they're there to like, what we're going to submit for queries is before we've done 3 more edits. Like the book's going to be different when it's published, if that's the route you go. So like someone who's already gone through that process and knows what it's like to work with somebody collaboratively on it, it's just going to make you a better writer to work with professionally, which is a part of that like greater craft, which is, the writing, the editing, and then the actual work of being the author, when you get to that published. It's so hard to do alone. So just that sense of, getting those perspectives has been awesome for our group, at least.
Nice. Very good. And we're talking about the benefits of being in a writing group now. I mean, has anyone here had any personal success stories or have noticed any significant benefits since you've joined the writing groups?
So that we were chatting about it earlier. It wasn't with my group, but when Jonny's group was starting, I volunteered to be their guinea pig. I offered them a short story, a very short story, and their group went over it. And that particular piece had bounced back a couple of times. And after their critique, I went back, I listened to their amazing advice, changed a couple of things, and now the story has been picked up. So that was
congratulations. That's
I
brilliant.
I got chills when she said that because we had so much fun doing it, and I guess just for the listeners too, hearing how maybe we structure our groups too might be helpful just to
Oh
know
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was on
different
me.
ways to do it.
List of questions to ask
Oh,
as well.
sorry,
So
I won't jump ahead, but just with this, our group wanted to get set up.
yeah,
So we kind of established we did a questionnaire that people could just answer with some basic questions. So the first meeting, we'd kind of done the introductory stuff, and we also wanted to practice a critique, but not on one of our own pieces. So she volunteered her piece in the Discord, which was so cool. I just threw it in the general chat, and Issa and I had chatted a couple times before that as well. So it was nice to just offer that to somebody else and provide, and just hearing that was the outcome for like, that's so exciting. Like, cause we all want each other to succeed, right? Like it's
yeah,
not a competition amongst authors. Like there's space for everybody in there. So the more we can like, and even connect between the groups like this is really great too, to share those like best practices on how we do stuff.
yeah, definitely. Let's carry on then. So Josh, how does your writing group work?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. So we meet every other week and we each submit one chapter on the Thursday before we meet because we meet on Mondays. And so we give each other like 4 days to read the chapter. And then in the group, we set aside about an hour and a half for each meeting. And each person, depending on how many people show up for that week, because we've had a bit of fluctuation with that, we split up the time equally. And so based on Brandon Sanderson's suggestion on how he runs his writing group, which I would definitely recommend to any listener that's interested in this. It's a fantastic resource.
Yeah.
We have the writer mute themselves. And so everybody else is basically not necessarily talking to the writer, but having discussion about the writing. Sometimes we'll make comments directly to the writer if we think it's important, but it's mostly about just what did we think? Was the pacing good? Was there any massive things that jarred us from the story? Is the plot being carried? Different stuff. We try to focus specifically on two things, both writer-specific suggestions and then also how we feel when we're reading it. Because feelings, like Brandon Sanderson says, are something you cannot reject because they're true no matter what. And then the thing we don't talk about is grammatical stuff because we think that's just like editing thing that they can do on their own. And so we don't really bother with that a ton.
Yeah, I think that's right. If you can just get Grammarly or something to fix that for you, it's not important as much. It's like say it's focusing on the feeling, the characters, setting, pacing, like especially in them early chapters, isn't it? That sounds like such a brilliant approach to take. How have you found it yourself? Have you liked that approach?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's helped me a ton. I haven't had like a huge success story, but I have gone a lot better as a writer. I've been able to analyze my work and sort of change. Like specifically, I had analyzed different writers, like from reading a ton and seeing how much they tend to over describe. A lot of times their settings and just info dump. And so I was like, I want to get as far away from that as possible. And my writing group helped me realize that if I do that, I don't have enough description and it doesn't really immerse the reader in the story.
Yeah.
And so that's probably been like the biggest thing for me.
Finding the balance. It's always hard to get the balance between descriptions and scantiness.
Ugly descriptions. That was like my first session. I went, guys, let me know if the pacing is right because I tend to rush the plot and forget my description. So my writing group definitely has helped me with that as well. But I also rely on them a little bit with grammar, not grammar per se, but like choice of words. Because again, English is my second language and I make some crazy mistakes. I'm always afraid that I'm going to make a terrible mistake. And
to be honest, it's all the more impressive that this is your second language and that you're doing it so well as well. So it's
I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just scrolling. So, but it's fun because we have great laughs. Once I use the word like shag and I meant shag or vice versa, and they were all laughing because it didn't make any sense. But that's the thing. I think when you find like people who are like kind and generous, because we are afraid. I was afraid of sharing my work, writing. Like, will they like it? Will they get it? Does it work? But once you meet them and you see like everyone is here to learn and they are so kind, so generous, and we can just laugh about it. So it's been so much fun. And I'm actually working on a novel. So instead of doing short stories, which what is my main thing, like the thing that I mostly do, and they are helping me so much with the structure of a novel. It's so hard writing a novel, guys. I applaud those who can. It's so hard. Short stories are easier.
See, I'm the opposite. I can't write short stories. They always end up they always end up being first chapters of novels.
Right.
And then I get in trouble. What about you, Jonny? How does the structure of your group work?
So I think we're a little bit we're at a bit of a faster pace because we actually meet weekly. I was like one of the few, so we've had to structure it a little bit differently, but I think it's really worked for us. So we meet, on Thursday nights every week. The previous week, the authors will submit each one chapter, between like 5,000 to 8,000. Like we're all writing fantasy, so sometimes they run a little long. You guys are talking about how you need more description. Like my chapters are always like beasts, and I'm like, please highlight what to cut out. I can't help myself sometimes. So my group's great about that, of like highlighting sections that like, oh, this feels repetitive. But sometimes you don't know, like you don't want to shove it down there into their faces, like you're world building. But at the same time, sometimes you need like there needs to be more there for people to like gravitate towards. So not knowing how to do, those kind of things, they've been great about that. But back to the structure of the group, and we also have our authors mute, and we each get 5 minutes to share what we thought about the author's chapter that they submitted that week. So we structure our time like that. We usually switch up who goes first and who goes last, because we found that there's a benefit to going last because you can kind of piggyback on what other people have said, or maybe it gives you an idea. So we try to switch that up so that it's not the same person doing that. And then we have about 10 or 15 minutes of structured time where the author gets to come in and discuss some of the things that people had or bounce ideas off them. And then we move on to the next author. And then that's the day when the chapters are submitted for the next week's stuff. So we've been able to get through about a third of each of our books, which is pretty great considering we all kind of started the first couple weeks of January. That's when our group got up and running. So
that's really awesome.
Our group meets once a month, so I'm thinking about asking them to meet more often.
Or even if everyone can't commit to that kind of, because it's a lot. Like it's a lot. But I think all of us are kind of in that place where we want. Most of us have written ahead. There's one guy, Tyler, is writing as we go, and he's doing a great job. But we always, stay in communication and be like, okay, like let us know if you want to swap one week so you can get a little extra time. Or there's been weeks where like I just didn't get through the edit that I needed to get through. I was up till midnight the night before, and it's like I need a homework extension. So we try to be flexible, like keep each other's mental health in mind too, because we know that like we're asking a lot of each other for a time commitment each week, and we do grammar editing. We do less of it now, but when things are like something we want to point out or consistent that we want to like really address, but we also kind of want to make sure that we're respecting how the author would write it. Like we don't want to write it for them, so we want to respect, like we can make suggestions on where or how something is feeling off. Maybe we don't know the solution, but so we do markups in Google Docs. Some people like it where you line edit on the page for them for stuff. Some people don't, so we kind of take it on how each author wants to receive their critiques, and we kind of adapt it according to that, because all of us have kind of different working processes.
We do that as well. Like after the meeting, I usually send them my notes, and my notes will have some line markings. It's not light editing, just like, oh, this line is incredible. Oh, this description seems out of place. Did you change POV here? Like little notes along the text. And then after it, I just go with the thoughts, and I give that sandwich critique, which is awesome. So we start with the things that you like, in the middle, things that didn't work, and you end with things that you like again. So they are hopeful, So I usually forward them my notes, and if they have notes for me, they will forward me as well. So Dan is a member of our group. He's so kind, and he has helped me so much with this lining, pointing out things like in text. It's really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think it's like I say, it's getting them fresh eyes. It's seeing things that you can't see because I know myself, like there's only so much you can do just sitting there reading the same thing over and over again, isn't it? You just need that help from other people. But it is tough. Like I see it a lot. Like in my job, we have a lot of writers, like copywriters, but feedback is the main part of that job. They get feedback on every article that they write, and some people just can't take feedback. I don't know what it is. It's maybe like an ego thing. They just switch the mind off completely to feedback. They just refuse to take it on board or think that they're too good for it. It's a really strange mindset, but I totally understand it because it's no one wants to feel like they're not good at something. And that is how feedback can be interpreted by a lot of people. So what about you guys? How have you found the process of switching off that ego and opening your mind to what other people are saying without getting wounded by it?
I think that the biggest thing is that it just sort of takes a certain mentality, because if there's two different ways you can think about it. One, these people are trying to help me and help me become a better writer and help my story become a better story. Or you can think about it as these people are attacking me and my story. And depending on how you look at it, that completely changes how you accept feedback. I've had an experience with someone where I gave feedback on their story and they just went off on me because they just felt attacked.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's actually the biggest part is for me, dealing with feedback, I have to understand, look, these people have my best interests in mind. And that's really important for listeners. If you're going to do a writing group, make sure they have your best interests in mind and they're willing to be kind and yet blunt and honest with you. And so when you have that sort of understanding between everybody, it really opens things up because everybody understands nobody's attacking anybody. And that's another reason why we mute, is so you don't have a chance to defend yourself, because that's such a temptation for us writers, because we know, this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You need to know this.
Yeah. But if the reader's not getting it, then you don't get the chance to explain, do you? You can't be sitting over the shoulder and, oh, this is what this means, actually. You've got to get it right.
Get it right. The explanation for you. And I also, I think you have to remember, like, any art is subjective. So even if you say, okay, we all read and write fantasy, but there are so many different types of fantasy, and not everyone will like everything. So for instance, my novel is first person present tense. So I start saying, okay, guys, this is first person present tense. I know it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
So just let me know what you think. And two of them came and say, yeah, I don't read first person. That's not for me. But this and this it worked. In this, it's fine. I understand. So like Joshua said, you have to be open to feedback. You're not going to improve if you're not open to feedback. You're not perfect. You got to know that you're not perfect.
Yeah.
And know they're trying to help, and know that even if they don't like something, it's still subjective and it's still your story. You can do whatever you like with that. But listen, just listen. You have to listen and consider. Then you decide what you do. But you got to be open to listen what they're saying.
Definitely. What do you think, Jonny?
I think that that's so true too. Like, and I come from an entertainment background, so like we're getting feedback all the time. You know, you're always getting notes, you're always getting corrections that you have to apply. So just sort of for me, but it's so different when it's your art and your craft in this thing. Like, nobody asked you to do this. Like, you're doing this because like you want to do it, and it takes, like, I've done so many different things in my life, but writing novels is like the hardest thing because it's just, there's so many parts to it, and you know, it's never going to be perfect. So you have to like let go of that perfectionist mentality and just remember that like feedback is always a gift, whether you want to keep it or exchange it or return it or whatever you want to do with that gift. But like the fact that anybody is taking the time to read your stuff and give their opinion on it is just something that if you're not really ready to do that, like you're really not ready to hone your craft, I don't think, not to be too harsh, but like you're going to have a hard time doing it because people also won't really want to work with you on stuff, again, because you're not open to hearing what they're saying about it, you know, and taking that in a constructive way. But you have to remember that like everyone wants it to be great. Like nobody picks it up being like, oh, I want this to be terrible. Like everyone wants it to be great. Like, and they want it to be the best that it can be. So usually trying to filter it through that, or like, don't read it if you're not in a good mood. Like, don't go through your critiques. Or if one of them upsets you, like, leave it alone for the night, sleep on it, and read it again the next day, because you might read it differently or see something different about, like, I know I've had that experience with myself where it's like, oh, maybe I'm taking this too personally. But also giving critiques is a skill too, and not everybody is as delicate as they should be, or the word thinks about the words as much as other people might, or words are one of those. I mean, it's the great thing about the craft too, is that people are going to read it differently. You know, you can give them clues on how to do it, but that there's text doesn't have those same context clues that voice do. So how people read it in their head may be completely different than how you wrote it. So I don't know. Those are just some things that I think some groups might struggle with. And you just have to have good communication and build a trust between the authors that you're all there to support each other. And if you do have an issue, you talk about it openly and hopefully you can resolve it. But sometimes it's not a fit. Like sometimes a work isn't something, if you're doing a author critique swap, if you're not really interested in that kind of work, like it's nothing personal, but you just want to make sure that you're invested in giving that person good feedback. Or maybe you guys are just at different writing levels and you need someone who has a little bit more or less experience than you do that's willing to work on the same kind of stuff. So I don't know, we got really lucky in that everyone is meshed well together and all of that. But that I've done other things before where that's been hard, or you know, you get into a critique group and you just realize like you aren't going to like the person's work, or they really don't like your work, or you know, consistent with showing up. So I think for us to just getting that sense of accountability to each other as well and each other's work is been something that has been super helpful for us.
Sounds like everyone kind of agrees then that being in a writing group definitely helps. And I think we've had other people on the show in the past. We may have listened to the episodes, like Adrian Tchaikovsky. He said he wrote 15 books before he got one accepted by a publisher, and he didn't edit any of them books. He just wrote and sent it off, and he didn't look for feedback. He couldn't take the feedback on. And he said it held him up. Like that's what he says anyway. So it's a really interesting chat. So anyone wants to listen, go back and check out that episode. It's full of insights there. I mean, the wounding of the ego is probably one reason why people don't go for a writing group straight away. I mean, is there anything that you've made you feel a bit hesitant about joining a group?
I don't know. Maybe like we did the groups online, so we had no idea who would be joining our group. It was just based on time zone. So if you had a group on your time zone, and it was everyone like fantasy, but we didn't know like what type of fantasy. And yes, I am very insecure about my English. So that was one of my, like, I was very much afraid of showing my face and speaking in English and then showing something that I wrote in English. But I don't know, those fears just lasted 5 minutes. 5 minutes, we're still everyone chatting, everyone getting along. And now I just like consider them my friends. They have become my friends, those writing groups. So I just like be bold, be brave, and try, see if it works for you. If it doesn't work, just try a different one, but don't stop trying. You will eventually find.
Well, I think you have to be willing to be vulnerable too. Like it's you have to put yourself in a vulnerable position, and it's brave to do that, to put yourself out there. And maybe you're going to get rejected, or people are going to, but that's the worst thing that could happen, right? And it's really not that terrible, you know. And you know, we were talking a little bit about nervousness, or just reframe it as excitement. Like, of course, you're going to be nervous to let other people see it and hear what they say, but you're also excited that somebody's going to see it and you're going to hear what they have to say. So I think sometimes just, you know, I try to always look for that bright side. But yeah, what's the worst thing that'll happen? If it doesn't work out, you could try a different group, or maybe it isn't for you. It's one of those things where everyone's not going to have the same path. Like people have different. Are you trying to do this as a profession for the rest of your life? Is this something you want to do as a hobby and you're just trying to enjoy it, or learn a language better or something? People have different aspirations for what they're doing. So I think just open communication and being willing to be vulnerable with your group, it builds that trust. And you have to do it if you want to, in life, if you never take a chance on something, then it's, it just stays with you, right?
Yeah.
As an artist.
I think if you're worried about sharing it with your writing group, it's going to be a lot more daunting when you share it with everyone else.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Josh? Is there anything that held you back when you were thinking about joining a group?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me, I was afraid that people wouldn't accept my feedback. I think that was probably the biggest thing, or would not necessarily not accept it, because I mean, obviously it's the writer's choice whether they accept it or not.
Yeah.
Rather how they respond to it. Because I mean, I had, like I said earlier, gotten like verbally attacked by someone who just didn't like how I gave them feedback. And I was like, oh man, I didn't really expect that. I was honestly just genuinely trying to give you feedback, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I was afraid that since I didn't know these people, like you mentioned, that they wouldn't react well to feedback, right? And I think one of my opinions is that maybe it's good to do it with people you already know. I think there is a benefit to doing it online with people you don't know yet, that are writers, because you're all coming in from the same place.
Yeah.
Right? There's no previous baggage, either good or bad baggage. It's just, we're all writers. We're all here to get better. We're all here to improve our stories. And so that was the biggest thing for me that made me hesitant.
Yeah.
This diversity is so awesome. Like our group, we have 3 in England, 1 in Germany, and me in Portugal. So we do have like different perspectives, different backgrounds, and even the different subgenres help a lot. So I'm reading a high epic fantasy. I'm critiquing a high epic fantasy. I can use the descriptions and word building in my dark fantasy, for example.
Nice.
And we also like different ages. We're like all adults, but everyone like more or less on the same page. This helps a lot as well. If you find people who write in your genre, I think that's essential, because I wouldn't be able to give like same feedback to a horror novel, for example. I would give some feedback, but not the same level that I can give with fantasy, which is fine. So I think that also helps.
Definitely.
Yeah, that was, I think, a crucial part of putting the writing groups together, right? At the very beginning, when I was sort of trying to organize all the 60 people in the different writing groups, a big part of it was, one, time zones, but also the people that volunteered to be leaders, which I believe both of you guys are, had to set the stage for what their writing group was going to be like, right? So what days worked, what times, but more specifically, what genres, right, were good, what level of content was good. Because then there wasn't as many surprises when you all joined together, right? You all had the same expectations. And I think that's a crucial thing.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea.
It was nice that it was self-assigned, but there was kind of an element of chance. And I was supposed to be like a leader of one group, but I ended up merging with a different group because it was like kind of similar, but nobody had signed up for a weekly one. But our group ended up being weekly because the 4 of us, there was a 5th person, but I don't think the timing worked out with them. So they never really got going with our group. So we've been 4 since the beginning, but it just worked out, and maybe that's just the universe at work. And I'm glad to hear everyone else's groups has been effective, because I know our group, we got over that fear, I think, pretty quickly, because we saw such benefits to our work from the group. So it was very immediately clear to all of us that we were getting something more valuable than we'd gotten with critique swaps or beta readers before. In that. So it's kind of alleviated that fear of like, oh, what's going to happen? But sometimes it might not work out. That's okay.
Yeah. You're in more control, don't you? Because by joining a group, you're making a commitment, and you, like I say, it might be weekly, it might be monthly or every 2 weeks, but you've got that, you've committed yourself to that that group and that meeting, and you've got to do work for that meeting. So it's a different mindset altogether, isn't it? And I think you engage with it a lot more. Yeah. So Josh, it's brilliant to see all these groups forming, and it's a nice sort of laid back sort of user-led approach, isn't it? And if anyone wants to get involved, they still can, can't they? We can just keep making more groups as the demand increases. So if anyone was interested in getting involved, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, just go on Richie Billing's Discord channel. My personal username is Cinnamon Spy, and you can type it in the general chat like, "Hey, I'm looking for a writing group." I actually had someone do that recently, and I was able to work it out with them because I'm the head of all the writing groups, like to sort out problems and get people where they need to be. And I was actually able to get him to join our writing group. So because it's hard to mesh well because you're sort of reading chapters on a whatever basis you're meeting on, and so it's hard to mesh in a group. But my goal is to try and make it so that either you can join a writing group or you can start a writing group with other people and sort of give tips to you on how to do that and just work with you all the way. So just contact me on Richie Billing's Discord channel is the best place.
Nice one. And if anyone wants to join, links for everything will be in the description. Chaps, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting with you all. And it's so lovely that we've all come together through this community and this love of writing. And yeah, it makes me smile every time I think about it. So thank you very much.
Oh, it makes me smile too.
Awesome.
Shout out to my writing group, Austin, Tyler, Melody. Thanks for letting me share, about what has worked.
And how can we all find out about you as individual writers? Isa, do you want to start?
You can find me on Instagram at Isa Wright. I also have a website where you can find my published work. I have a few short stories published around.
Nice.
Just come say hi on Instagram. I'm always there.
What about you, Jonny?
I actually don't have my writing platform built yet online because I'm still hiding in the woods and writing. So catch me building that in the near future.
Yeah, well, we see you on Discord.
Yeah, I'm on the Discord, Gamer Jonny, so come find me.
Very good. And what about you, Josh?
I don't have a huge writing platform either. I do have a website where I draw fantasy maps for authors on commissions and just do my own work. And so
Joshua made a map for me. Awesome for my story. The Azules Minerva.
Amazing.
Yes, that's just a passion of mine. So if you want to find me there, the website is on the edge business.wordpress.com, and you can find me there.
Yeah, I'll put links for everything in the description. And thank you everyone for listening. I hope you've really enjoyed this insight into writing groups. And if you'd like to join, you know where to go. A big thank you to Jonny, Isa, and Josh again. I personally think the benefits of being in a writing group are amazing, and it's one of the most efficient and effective ways to get better at writing. I understand it can be daunting at first, especially when we're just getting our feet on the ground, but when you get to that stage where you feel like you want to take the next step with your writing, you feel like you want to improve and that you're open enough to accept the wound and blows that feedback can deal, then definitely go down the writing group route. And hopefully today's episode, you've learned something new. You've gained a bit of an insight into what you can expect, and you've learned how to join a writing group. And if you want to do that, then the link is in the description. Just sign up with your email address, you'll get the invite, and before you know it, you can be connecting with the likes of Josh, who's in charge of our writing groups, and he can set you up with one, and you can pretty much start meeting people straight away. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow or subscribe so that you don't miss any more. We've got loads coming up in the next few months and stuff that's happening beyond the airwaves too. So make sure you join the likes of our Discord community so you can get access to our panels, and head over to YouTube where you can watch videos and clips from the show, as well as other features like panel recordings. If you're looking for more resources on how to write fantasy, don't forget to check out our Patreon page. You can get access to classes on the likes of creating characters, building fantasy worlds, editing a novel, writing a novel, and then also book marketing classes as well, such as on email marketing and on SEO, which is what I do for a day job. So you can learn all about websites and getting traffic to your website by checking them out too. And that is about all for today. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back on the 28th of May with a brand new episode. And until then, keep on scribbling.